Growing up, I was lucky enough to enjoy playing video games since the 8-bit era. It was a wild time because the rise of the video game industry brought an onslaught of what many considered to be the beginning of the console wars. In the video game industry, a console war describes the competition between two or more video game console manufacturers in trying to achieve better consumer sales through more advanced console technology, an improved selection of video games, and general marketing around their consoles. We could talk for days on this, but for this video we'll focus on a marketing term called product differentiation. This is how Sega and Nintendo fought it out. Product differentiation is a part of marketing strategy that distinguishes the key aspect or aspects of a company's products or services from their competition. Successful product differentiation leads to brand loyalty and an increase in sales. So let's dive right into it. The first thing Sega did was upgrade their console hardware to provide more refined graphics. You probably know this console as the Sega Genesis. It was more powerful than the Nintendo, and Sega's marketing pushed on the more advanced graphics their system offered. Sega used a two-pronged marketing strategy to challenge Nintendo. The first was to stress the arcade-like capabilities of the Genesis. They compared games like Altered Beast to simpler 8-bit games of the NES. They revised and devised the famous slogan, "Genesis does what Nintendo don't."
What Nintendo don't.
The second thing was licensing and influencer marketing. Sega knew Nintendo held most of the rights to arcade game ports for the NES, so they paid celebrities for their naming rights like Pat Riley basketball, Arnold Palmer golf, Joe Montana football, and Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. Nintendo then introduced the Super Nintendo. So Sega began aggressive marketing campaigns to make the Genesis look cool over the NES and the SNES. Games were made that better fit the American market, particularly sports games, which they gained a reputation for. Sega revamped their advertising approach, aiming for more of a young adult audience, as Nintendo was still positioning the SNES as a child-friendly console. Advertising focused on Sonic the Hedgehog and edgier games in the Genesis library, and its larger library of sports games which they had appealed to this group. Television ads for the Genesis and its games ended with the Sega Scream, a character shouting the same Sega to the camera in the final shot, which also caught on quickly. Nintendo losing ground focused on more of the advanced features of the SNES that were not present in the Genesis, such as its Mode 7, to create simulated 3D perspective effects. The Genesis' resilience paid off against the SNES. Several of Nintendo's third-party developers broke their exclusive development agreements with Nintendo and licensed to develop for the Genesis. Big publishers like Acclaim, Konami, Tecmo, Taito, and Capcom, the latter of which arranged to have special licensing with Sega, allowing them to publish select titles exclusively for the Genesis. During this period, the push for marketing by both Nintendo and Sega led to print advertising and the growth of video game magazines. Nintendo had already established Nintendo Power in 1988, and Sega did the same with Sega Power. By 1992, Nintendo knew they were no longer in the dominant position in the console market. A year into the SNES's release, the SNES's price was lowered to $149 to match the Genesis, which Sega reduced the Genesis again to $129 shortly after. By the start of '93, the Genesis had captured about 55% of the market, a stark contrast to 1990 when Nintendo had controlled 90% of the market. I think that's a good stopping point for this video. There's so much we covered in a short amount of time, and this is a good opportunity to see how your company stands in regards to its product differentiation in the industry. So, the question remains, can you stay ahead of the game? We'll find out. I'm Moose from itsmoose.com, providing global marketing on a local level.